welcome to Blow the Whistle, the show where every Friday we'll be chatting about all things sport, especially in the Northwest. I'm Evie Jessup.
And I'm Max Hayes. Get involved in today's conversation. We want to hear from you. You can follow us on Instagram at blowthewhistle.us and let us know your thoughts on today's topics discussed in the show.
Coming up on today's programme, we'll be discussing all things F1 as soon as the latest on rugby and football with some sofa chat throughout the programme.
Yes, right, let's kick things off then. James, good to see you, freelance football journalist, to talk to us about all things World Cup at the moment. It's been a busy 24 hours for England, of course, 26-man squad being released. What were your initial thoughts on it? Any surprises?
Yeah, I think the players that didn't make it were almost more interesting. You know, you've got players like Tony, he's had a great season so far with Brentford, and players like that with England. And I think because it's in the middle of the season, you've got this strange thing whereby there's players that, for example, like Callum Wilson, who maybe if the season was like it normally is until the end of May. If the World Cup was in the summer, then maybe they wouldn't have had a chance to have got straight in there. So I think it's a lot more interesting now it's at the winter because you've got players like that are in there, and we've seen it before with England. You know, players like Mark Noble, for example, that missed out on Euro 2016, and these sort of fringe players that you're never going to quite sure as to who makes it. So I thought it was a really interesting announcement, and obviously Southgate sticks with the players he knows. He's got players like Maguire in there who haven't been at their top form this season for their clubs. But it's still really interesting seeing how he still prefers players like that, but still wants to bring in some of these new blood that haven't played for England before. I mean, Callum Wilson, it's his first call up, and what an opportunity it is to impress.
What are your thoughts on Ivan Toney, the Brentford striker, not being included?
I think it's a shame because I think England could do with that raw pace up front this season in the World Cup, and I think we've seen it before, especially earlier on this season. He was almost unplayable. I remember the United game where Brentford won 4-1, and he was so good in that game. And I think especially in the latter stages, obviously you want players with a bit more experience who know how to beat the top sides. But I think this is the issue, and this is a lot of the criticism that has been aimed at Southgate. He doesn't like to experiment too much with those types of players, and he can almost get a bit stale in a way. I mean, someone like a Toney, if England were in a semi-final or a big game, he'd be crying out for someone like that to come on and just make a big difference. And I think the way that he underused Grealish in the Euros is another interesting one, and the way that he's going to play is going to be interesting with the system, because someone like a Toney, you think, all right, Gareth Southgate is a manager, he plays quite a defensive, quite a counter-attacking system. Someone like a Toney would fit into that perfectly, and I'm not sure why he's not included him personally.
Yeah, I mean, James Maddison being included as well, I think there'd have been a riot from the England fans if he wasn't. That has been a huge talking point for the last few weeks, and Southgate surely had to pick him.
He has. I mean, Leicester haven't been that good this season. Their form has not been as good as it could be. They're towards the end of the table. But again, Maddison has been a really important player for Leicester. And again, another player for England that I think has been sort of underused in the wrong position. And it's difficult if you go to Southgate. How do you get all these players that play in a very similar position to all fit into the same role? And England have always had this problem. They always had it with Paul Scholes, Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard. How do you fit them all into the same system? And he's got it again this time around. Maddison probably normally plays as a number 10 for Leicester. Does he put him out on the wing? Does he play him in that system? And especially the way that Southgate plays with England, Maddison doesn't really fit into that system. So it's going to be hard again for Southgate to make all of these players happy. And there's always going to be players that miss out. And I think it's harder now. I mean, it goes down to a 23-man squad, and those 3 players that are going to miss out, that's even worse.
So realistically, how do you think England will do in the World Cup?
I think the Nations League performance was poor, and I think a lot of people have understood maybe that England aren't quite the same side that they were in the Euros. I think the fever from that, especially certain players like I mentioned, like Maguire, had a great Euros, not at the same level. I think other players as well. Rashford's starting to get his form back, but even he's looked a bit shaky for United this season. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. I think the fact that it's in the winter means that some of the players are a bit more fresh. We've seen before, Rooney was a good example in 2010. Amazing player for United that season, scored 20 goals, went to South Africa, wasn't the same player. And I think that isn't going to be quite the same. I mean, we're seeing players now. It'll be interesting this weekend to see maybe if they drop off a bit and they don't want to put quite as much effort in to not get injured. But I think they're looking a bit more raw and fresh, which is good to see. I mean, a lot of these South American players, this is towards the end of their season now, and they've got a gruelling calendar. I mean, Brazil, Argentina, you're looking at 50, 60 games a season for their top sides. So I think the fact that it is in the winter, there's been a lot of criticism and controversy surrounding it, but it benefits the European sides a lot more.
Yeah, James, finally, how do you think the players are going to cope with the intense heat? Of course, this is a competition that's been moved to accommodate the heat and moved to the winter, but it's still going to be extremely unbearable for some of them.
I think so. I mean, I think the fact that the stadiums are air conditioned will help. I think the temperatures are looking at sort of 20, 25 degrees. I mean, let's not forget some of these England players are in Manaus in Brazil, which is a lot more warmer than it's going to be in Cassar in the Amazon rainforest. Russia as well was still warm. I think the players are used to it. They've got warm weather training camps now. St George's Park has got that sort of facility facilities available. But like you say, I mean, this is a problem that England will always have in World Cups, because you've got South American sides who are much used to a warmer climate, and they are going to be able to play better in those sort of temperatures, and that's just how it is. And I don't really think England can use that as an excuse now, because they've got a world-class training facility in St George's Park. They've got facilities there that they've used, so there's no reason as to why they can't compete. And I think the temperature's one thing. I think the fact that, you know, none of these countries have ever played in Qatar before. You know, if you look at the Euros, for example, over the summer, a lot of those England players were familiar with Wembley, familiar with its turf. A lot of these stadiums are brand new. So in terms of going there, I think that's going to be interesting, because certain players have these sort of reference points in stadiums. You know, they know where things are on the pitch, they know the shape, but all of these stadiums are going to be brand new to everyone. So I think that's going to be interesting, because everyone's almost level with that.
James, thank you very much, and fingers crossed we will get you in throughout the show, throughout the time that England are at the World Cup, and fingers crossed we're doing well. Thank you very much. F1 time then, this in this afternoon's programme, and it's the penultimate race of the season. Our correspondent, Natalie Durkin, has more for us.
Thanks guys, here's what's coming up for the F1. So this weekend we have the Brazilian Grand Prix. Now this track last year provided a great race, with Lewis Hamilton winning a glorious victory. Obviously after the qualifying he was on pole, but then he was disqualified and sent to the back of the grid for a breach of the regulations regarding the DRS gap within his rear wing. But then in the sprint race he made up a lot of positions and then eventually won the Grand Prix, which was amazing to watch. Therefore this year he has been made an honorary citizen of Brazil, which is fabulous for F1 fans, and the Brazilian fans clearly love Lewis Hamilton. Now this weekend it looks like it's going to be another Red Bull win, unfortunately. It has been a bit of a boring season for F1 fans. It's been quite consistent, with Red Bull winning, Max Verstappen at the top, dominating the season. However, there's a chance that there could be a difference with Mercedes, as last week they looked very competitive. The only downfall was Mercedes' strategy with the tyres, because obviously the soft tyre was the more desirable tyre for that race. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But anyway, Daniel Ricciardo has been rumoured to be the Mercedes reserve driver for next year, as obviously he doesn't have a seat for next year currently, so we'll see what happens with that.
Thank you, Natalie. Who do you think will win the F1 this weekend? Let us know and get involved on our Instagram at blowthewhistle.uos.
Yes, now looking ahead to a big weekend of rugby fixtures, both in League and Union. Our reporter Leo joins us now. More Sofa Chat. Leo, good to see you.
Talk to us about good to see you both.
Good to see you. Talk to us about what's happening this weekend then in the rugby.
So it's been the Rugby World Cup, the Rugby League World Cup, as you both know. It's in England as well, which has been brilliant for obviously the country. You know, loads of kids being able to go get involved, go to the stadiums, go check it out and have a good time basically. And what's more, the men's and women's team have both been absolutely flying, both in the semi-finals after winning their group, absolutely smashing the group. The men's team in the semi-final against Samoa, who they already played in their group and beat 66, so absolutely thrashed them last time out. So looking for more of the same again. You know, England men's are firm favourites to go on and win this competition, win it for the first time ever. And I think it will be a real sense of pride and togetherness, like we saw with the Lionesses' incredible victory last summer. If England do go on and win it for the record-breaking first ever time, then you know it'll be great for the whole country altogether. The women's team as well, as I mentioned, they're in the semi-finals. They beat Papua New Guinea 42-4 in the last game to secure, you know, the run through to the semi-finals. However, the opponent is still undecided, as you know, still some more games have got to be played. They've won the World Cup twice already. They've won the Rugby League Cup twice. In 1994 and 2014, so it's been quite a while since they won last. But you know, it's like the Lionesses, it will be a great sense of togetherness and a massive achievement if they can go on and win it this summer, or this winter. Sorry, this winter.
Obviously, you mentioned the Lionesses. Do you think it'll be a turning point in women's rugby, the fact that they're doing so well right now?
Yes, definitely. It's no secret that women's rugby is less viewed than men's rugby. The same as football in that sense. But definitely, women's stadium attendances have been skyrocketing throughout the tournament. Obviously, with England doing so well, absolutely battering opponents. The viewership has gone much higher. It gives an opportunity for young girls, schoolgirls, to get involved, try something new, because, growing up, I didn't, my sisters didn't play much rugby growing up, so, for them to be able to see this, it's really helpful for them.
Leo, thanks very much. I'll try not to say good to see you again. Thanks for coming in. Right, on Monday night, I had the pleasure of attending the North West Football Awards, which honours and celebrates the region's footballing elite, recognising excellence both on and off the field. Pep Guardiola collected Best Manager of the Season, and the biggest moments of the evening came when Lionesses Jill Scott and Ellen White won the Lifetime Achievement Award. Here's a compilation of the best bits from the evening.
Jill obviously is not here because she's a little bit preoccupied.
Well, sorry that I can't be there today. I just want to say a massive thank you on receiving this award, a lifetime contribution to football. I was so happy to win the Player of the Season back in 2015 at the North West Football Awards, and I think in that time the game has grown so much. So I'd like this award just to be an award for women's football in general, how much the game's grown. It's an absolute honour to receive it alongside Ellen White as well, and I hope now the game can just keep progressing. So have a nice meal, have a nice awards night, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Salford City hosts mid-table Wimbledon tomorrow. It'll be the Dons' first time ever visiting the Peninsula Stadium. Final fixtures are ahead this weekend before a 6-week break for the World Cup.
Second in the league, Manchester City host Brentford for a lunchtime kick-off in the Premier League, with City hoping to go top of the league.
Yes, and Man United, their rivals, travel to London on Sunday to face Fulham. Eric Ten Hag's side are full of confidence after a thrilling 4-2 victory over Aston Villa in the Carabao Cup last night.
And that's all from us today. We hope you've enjoyed this instalment of Blow the Whistle.
Yes, we'll be back next week at 4 p.m. for all your local sports. Keep up to date with us on social media at blowthewhistle.us.
Bye from me.
And bye from me. Have a good one.